All right, we are live on the air. This is the Synth Summit Show, episode 9. I actually numbered this one correctly right out the gate. I double checked and triple checked. I also shared the correct timelines for when this video would be live to people. So people should actually be able to watch this and be correct on that. So that's pretty good. This show is going to be great. We've got Mickey Delp of Delptronics, who was very nice when I met him out at NAMM this past year, and we had a nice conversation about some of the upcoming modules that he has coming out, and some of his other products as well. He's got some other esoteric things going on out there, and of course joining us, I'm Flux of fluxwithit.com, and joining us we also have Upright Bryce of modularbeatsmith.com. Bryce, how you been?
Pretty good, pretty good. I can't complain. It's
Yeah.
all good.
Now you've been working on you got an article series coming out now, or what's going on with that as far as
Well, right now I'm trying to documentate all of the modes of disting, get those all squared away, and put them in a PDF. And maybe it's a long process because disting has so many modes, and I'm trying to do everything. I want it to be really user friendly and easy to understand. So that's what I'm doing right now. So.
Excellent. So Mickey,
Yes.
how have you been?
Been good.
So last time we spoke was at NAMM, and you guys were kind enough to let us kind of bombard into your place of residence out there, and we got to hang out and talk for a while. It was a really great time. What I wanted to ask you about and really dive into a lot for this show was some of the modules. Now, we did a little interview at NAMM, but I didn't really get to dive into as deep as I wanted to about some of those modules. Now, the first one that I really wanted to talk to you about is you've got a CV2 MIDI module that's coming out.
Right.
Can you give us the basic outline of what that module is supposed to be and what the idea behind it is?
Yeah. Well, the idea behind it is to merge all your equipment together. There's plenty of MIDI to CV modules, which is great, of course. But there's really like one module that goes the other direction, and there's a Dofer module, and when I looked at that, I kind of saw an opening. It's just not big enough. It doesn't do enough. So that was my inspiration. I just said, well, this thing needs to really have a ton of jacks and be able to do any MIDI message and that kind of thing.
So the thing about this module is, like you said, it has to have a ton of jacks. You've got what, like 24 inputs on this thing?
Yeah, 24 inputs.
And I'm gonna bring up the picture of this thing so that people can see what we're talking about as well. But go on. So you have 24 inputs on it, and how do you go about assigning things to it?
Well, it's got an LCD screen on it, so you can easily go through and set the parameters for each jack. So the jacks are in a grid. So when you scroll through the menu, you say, all right, well, what's the function for A1 jack? And you say, well, that's MIDI CC channel such and such. Yeah, you can. There's a lot of parameters. You can set the input range to be 0 to 5 or 0 to 10. We're not doing through 0. Not doing negative voltages. There's limitations with everything. But the input voltage can be either 0 to 5 or 0 to 10. The output CC, you can specify the range. It can either be the 0 to 127 or something more or less.
Wow.
You can set it to be like a switch. With MIDI CC, sometimes there are switches, so you want to say well, if it's 0, it's 0, and if it's anything above 0, then you flip it to 127.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's the level of granularity. But of course, it's not just CC. It does NRPNs as well. 10-bit. That's another question I get a lot. It's what's the ADC resolution, and it's 10-bit. So the maximum for non-registered parameter number, NRPN, is 10 bits, or you can do 7-bit. And of course, it does every other MIDI message. You can say assign a jack to be a gate, so it'll send MIDI node on and node off messages. And the pitch can either be fixed, or the pitch can be assigned to another jack. So you can say, well, here, jack A1 is a gate, so it's a node on, node off message, and the pitch comes from A2. So you plug your sequencer, gate and CV in there, and boom. Same thing with velocity. You can either set a fixed velocity, or you can assign the velocity to a jack. So you can say, well, okay, so for that gate that's coming in on A1, the velocity comes from A3.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to basically control any software, any hardware, whatever, from your modular now.
Yeah. So the idea, obviously, it's I think it's probably going to be most interesting to people that want to connect their modular to their DAW.
Mm-hmm.
You hook it up to your laptop or whatever. But of course, you can control any MIDI instrument. You got some keyboard from 1984, it'll work.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. I was looking at it, and with some of the things that are going on right now, Superbooth, Native Instruments had announced more interactive control in and out of the modular with their blocks, and I've been working with Roman's Audio on System 63 for a good few years now, and that's pretty much ready for release. And it's got some MIDI to CV and CV to MIDI kind of interaction, but with having 24 inputs on it, it makes it much more straightforward to just jack in and then be able to output through the MIDI channels that way.
Yeah.
How intuitive are you finding it to assign these parameters? Do you feel like is it a head scratcher to set it up, or do you feel like it's actually pretty straightforward?
Well, yeah, the menu system I think is pretty easy. Yeah, there's one rotary encoder, so knob button and a back button. That's it. So you scroll through and you have a little cursor, and then when you click the encoder knob, then you're adjusting the value for that. Spin the thing, click it again to set it, rotate again to go to the next parameter. It's actually pretty fast.
And can you tell us a little bit about that other module next to it? You have a general MIDI audio?
Yeah, it's a general MIDI audio module. The two of them are separate modules, sold separately, work great individually. Neither one requires the other. The general MIDI audio module is really straightforward. MIDI in and audio out, and so you can plug in from your DAW into that thing, or from like a little MIDI keyboard or whatever you've got, and just it makes all the MIDI sounds. So the full MIDI sound set, all the 128 instruments and 47 percussion instruments, and it's for an analog purist, of course, they're going to be like, why would I want that? But it's generated a lot of interest in people, because just the ability to have that many more oscillators in your rig. Of course, you can take the output and send it wherever you want.
Sure.
It's using a really simple MIDI wavetable chip.
Okay. That was going to be my question.
It's a pretty well-known chip. It comes from Dream, the French company, and it's pretty straightforward. The one sort of value add is that module has a MIDI merger as well. So it can take MIDI input from the jack on the front, but it can also take input from behind the panel, which connects directly to the CV to MIDI.
Wow.
We've got those.
I have a question. I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I know usually MIDI channel 10 is usually for when you just download MIDI files, is usually reserved for like drum stuff. So do you have like drum sounds in there as well, or I mean, is it?
Yeah, that module does the full general MIDI percussion set as well.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Now, how far off are these modules as far as being released? I see they all say coming soon, and they have a price point on them already.
Right.
Are you fairly close to these? Have they been through QA? Like, what are you doing now?
All right, so they're in prototype, both of them. Actually, the general MIDI audio module will be out first, I'm not giving a date yet. I don't like to give estimated dates. I'd rather like give a date when I actually know it. So it's a little more than a month, I'll say. When it's a month out, I'll know, because it'll be in manufacturing, and you know, at the point that we're just waiting for the boards to come back so we can assemble the module, then I'll give a fixed date. So, you know, it's a little ways out. The that module is pretty much done. The CV to MIDI, there's a lot of programming, so I'm working a lot on refining that and making the menu system easy to use. And I really, with that one, the hardware has gone through a couple revisions. We talked about this at NAMM. You know, once the hardware is finalized, it'll go to manufacturing, but the programming is going to take a little longer, because I want to get the production hardware into the hands of a bunch of people for beta testing. This module requires more than, you know, 5 beta testers.
Absolutely. I'm raising my hand, by the way. So one thing that we talked about at NAMM, and I didn't want to skip over it, we had talked about latency, because that's one of my major concerns. I use a lot of MIDI modular audio. Like I use a large combination of different things in my setup, and latency is like a huge killer for me. You had talked about you're using 2 processors in it, is that correct? And can you talk to us about how you're trying to get the timing as close as possible?
Yeah, so it's there's trade-offs, right? So because there's so many jacks, there's a lot of polling that needs to happen. The processor has to be reading those jacks constantly, and if it's not reading them often enough, then you're going to get, for one, latency issues, and another, it's going to affect you know, the resolution of it. Say you do something like a pitch wheel, which is one of the things it can do. You want to try to minimize stair stepping with the pitch, and if you're not polling fast enough, you're going to have that problem. So, pardon me. Yeah, I had an early version of it, which actually I use. It's what's in my my rack now, but it just wasn't polling fast enough. I was basically pulling the jacks using the analog to digital as fast as you can, you know, and there are limitations. But I was using that for the gates, and I found that the biggest issue was missing a really short gate. You know, if you get a gate that's a millisecond, or, you know, just a small transient, you want to be able to react to that. And if you've got, you know, it takes 10 milliseconds to read all your jacks, yeah, you're going to miss gates. That's the worst thing that could happen. So in order to get around that, actually use a bigger chip that's got a lot of pins, and not to get too techie, your audience is pretty techie, but so the jacks actually are wired directly to the pins on the microcontroller in order to be able to read the gates really fast. Just, you know, pulling them constantly, and of course, you know, it can read all of the pins at the same time. Then the analog to digital, that has to happen in a loop. You know, again, trade-offs. The module, I think, is like a super reasonable price at $295. You know, if it was a $600 module and stacked 4 boards deep, I could have a separate ADC for every jack, and it would get a little insane, and it would also price it out of accessibility. So there is a limit to the ADC. The chips we're using can do 1,000 reads a second, so it's just over what's that, a nanosecond or something. It's kind of ridiculous. It's very fast.
Yeah.
So again, it's the gates is the most important part. So that's like super fast. You don't want to miss that. You don't want to miss a clock, that kind of thing. But it's a question that a lot of people ask. So it's gonna be probably like a week's worth of work just to really go and do really good timing, so that I can answer the question authoritatively. And somebody says, well, what is the real numbers? Like, what's the shortest that you're guaranteed to catch? What's the absolute speed on your ADCs and that kind of thing? There are tricks actually to make it a little faster, because we're not pulling the jacks for analog signals if it's assigned to be a digital jack. So you can speed up the reads of the analog by assigning some of the jacks to be gates. So if you say, well, I need 8 and there's 24, so I'm going to assign 16 of them to be gates, and that essentially takes no additional CPU time to do the analog reads, and then you get a higher resolution on the analog. It's complicated.
Makes sense. Yeah.
But I'm happy to hear that at least it's something at the forefront of the concern during the build, because that's something that I feel like if it becomes a matter of designing that, and that's like a secondary thought, and it ends up kind of like look at Android tablets for music, and the touchscreen interface was kind of like came secondary, and because of that, it never really quite matches up to the iOS stuff because of the latency of the touch round trip situation. And it's kind of the same thing when we're talking about this stuff. It's like for music related things, we need immediate response. Like this is all fairly quick math when when artists are working with 30-second notes and things of that nature. It becomes and if you're tempo locking LFOs and oscillators and things like that, then it can be a real nightmare if this stuff won't keep up,
Yeah. So there's obviously, like I said, trade-offs. If you try to feed it like audio rate signal and tell it that that's a gate, yeah.
I mean, there's also going to be obvious limitations of MIDI spec to begin with, and as much as people rant on about things like OSC control and some of the other MIDI 2 and that kind of stuff, like some of the newer protocols that are out there, none of them have the hold that MIDI does. You know what I mean? None of them. At the end of the day, like I've got all kinds of fancy equipment, but the amount of times that I use OSC control is pretty minimal, and it's not just because less stuff has it. It's because for one, it's not as intuitive to set up, and it's a whole nother method of working and that kind of thing. So to me, it's like at the end of the day, even if MIDI has certain limitations, it's still the best of the bunch, really.
Yeah, it really is. I love MIDI. It's amazing that it still works as well as it does. I don't want to hate on MIDI. Well, okay, I will a little bit. So technically, MIDI is still version 1, and the spec came out in 1983. I feel that they could have added a little bit in the intervening decades.
Yeah.
Just the data rate, which was very reasonable at the time. Why, say 10 years later, 93, why did they not come out with a double data rate version of MIDI? Just say, okay, if your equipment can handle it, you know,
It'll let it run.
And you know, here's the protocol for speed negotiation and that kind of stuff. This is really simple, and this stuff was designed for the processors of the day, and that stuff, you know, which is why you can do MIDI on a 50-cent microcontroller today.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
it's not that difficult to do, but yeah, I think that the spec should have been updated and not changed outright, but just things added to it, like options for faster data rate, you know, options for different jacks too. Like I don't know why the large size DIN jack is still the standard. I know why it was in the day, because there were a zillion DIN cables, you know, available, and it was a very good shielded cable, so you could do a decent distance, you know, with low current, and you know, it made all the sense in the world in the day, and it doesn't anymore. So it's kind of annoying.
So are you? I mean, you've noticed that companies like Korg and Arturia are doing those mini jack to DIN cable adapters, but from what I understand, they're not standardized between what the outputs on those are. So right. I mean that's a head scratcher right there. It's like, well, why aren't you guys standardizing that? You know? Yeah,
that's ridiculous. Yeah, I know. There's an article on Create Digital Music a couple months ago about like why aren't we using 3.5 millimeter for MIDI? And there are good reasons, but again, for short distances, you know, any 3.5 millimeter cable is going to work fine. You know, you run into problems at longer distances, but then you know, use the adapter. So yeah, I'm a fan of that. I think it's good. I've actually had a couple people since we announced the module ask if there was going to be a 3.5 millimeter jack on the for the MIDI out. And we're thinking about it. It's easy enough to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've also been asked if there's going to be USB jack, and that's not as easy. There's, you know, it would increase the cost a lot.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that about the USB as far as whether it makes if it makes a difference. As far I know it would drive the price up, but as far as speed or
it does both. Yeah, it adds a lot to the complexity of the programming, of course, but you know. That's minor. It adds to the cost. You know, a panel-mounted USB jack is kind of annoying. There's a couple ways to do it, but it's more expensive. And you know, so it limits you a little bit. You can get obviously a MIDI to USB cable.
Right. Yeah.
I paid $5 for mine on Amazon, so you know that's easy enough. The only thing, of course, is that you know that won't handle like a USB host mode. So you can use a cable like that to plug into your computer, you know, which is then the USB host. But you know, if you have some sound making device that has a MIDI input, it's not going to be MIDI host. So again,
yeah, and that was something that I had initially asked you about as well, and when you kind of commented back to me about, well, yeah, you can get a $5 MIDI adapter, you know, USB to MIDI adapter, I was like, yeah, you're kind of right. You know, DIN these days is just ugly, but other than that, it's not. You know what I mean? Like that's all. Realistically speaking, that's all it is. It's nice to see USB pop up on your computer, like when you're working in a DAW. Like I've been messing with the. I have the Synthotech MIDI to CV module, and it's got USB on it, and you know that's one of the nice things. But when you talk about the price point, now you have it listed as $295 on the site. Hopefully it stays around that price point, because I think that's a pretty aggressive price point for something with 24 inputs on it.
Yeah, that's a great price. That is a great price.
Yeah, you know, a lot of people said $395, would be perfectly reasonable. I think Eurorack's overpriced, and
I think it depends.
I don't want to add to that. There are some reasons why it is. I don't think we need to get into that necessarily,
Sure.
but in general, I think modules are a little expensive right now, and it's a real barrier to entry.
Yeah, it is.
You want the standard to survive. You don't want this boom to end. You want it to plateau and still have lots and lots of people getting into Eurorack and using it. And I think keeping prices reasonable is going to help that.
Sure. I mean, there's certain manufacturers that I talk to that I'm like, you should really raise your prices, and then there's other guys where I'm like, wow, that price is okay. You're catering to the emperors, okay,
Yeah.
But no, that's really nice to hear. When I was looking at it, I saw it in person, and seeing it in person is a lot different than just seeing the mock-up that's on the website right now. And it's an impressive looking module. I mean, you look at it, and with the current rate of the way modules are going today, it's very easy to look at it and say, oh, well, that's going to be a lot more than that. So seeing those price points on there, and the general MIDI module is pretty low price as well.
Yeah. Again, well, yeah, pricing is a difficult science. You want to price things so that you're making a profit, but there's psychological factors as well. If you come out with a MIDI audio device and it's $150 like mine, are people going to say, well, that's really cheap? I don't even is it that good because it's so cheap? But the fact of the matter is, it is cheap. I mean, there's only a few parts, and it has its limitations, and it's using a chip that was made for cheap keyboards and karaoke machines. It's not trying to be more than it is. So yeah, pricing is a tricky thing, but I think one of the things that I pride myself on with Delptronics is that this stuff's reasonable.
Definitely, yeah.
Hey, one thing I want to mention, this is totally off topic, but I have ADD and I get to do stuff like that because it's my show. So I just wanted to make a quick note that the reason why I'm wearing a blue shirt today is it's Lighted Up Blue Day for autism awareness. So I wanted to, let everybody know why I have a blue shirt on, and if you're in any kind of position to do anything for autism awareness, people should do that. So I just thought I would mention it.
Gosh, you should have told me. I would have worn blue.
Well, you know what? You got blue in the background, and that's close enough. Plus, you got blue on your name tag, so we'll say that that's what it's all about. Same with Bryce. He's got his little BMX hat. It's got some kind of blue on it. I don't know. We'll see.
Oh boy.
The Little Drummer Boy is at least for a while, now that it's sold out, I mean, it was a very high-selling module, and now you have an update coming for that. So let's talk a little bit about Little Drummer Boy 2 and the expansion modules, both for Little Drummer Boy 1 and 2, what the differences between the modules are, and just a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I was hoping to have the 2 out sooner. I didn't want to be out of stock for so long, but I also didn't want to just make more of the 1, because at this point I've kind of grown out of it, and I didn't want to put the same thing out because I felt it needed to be better. And so the LDB1, yeah, here's the 2 on your screen now. So the LDB1 had 8 inputs for triggers and an audio out, mix out. And then there was an expansion module that gave you individual outs and individual volume controls. Actually, if you click on, no, scroll up. If you click on discontinued.
Oh, okay, here we are.
Yeah. Right, so this was the original module. 4 HP, trigger in, mix audio out, and then the expansion had, as I said, the individual outs and level controls. Also, an early module for me was done through hole, so it's a little big, in depth, so it wasn't skiff friendly. Didn't have reverse polarity protection on it. What was I thinking? Yeah, so a lot of lessons learned from the original. So now if you look at that and then go to back to the 2.
Go back up. Here we go.
Yeah. So what we've been able to do is in 6 HP, just a little bit wider, we've actually got all of the functionality really of the original LDB1 plus its expander. So you get individual outs and level controls. And some of them are grouped. Obviously, hi-hat's only one instrument, so you have one out and level control. Snare, kick gets its own. The toms are combined, so there's a single volume and out for that. It's a pretty reasonable trade-off. Rimshot and woodblock also share a volume control. They don't get their own out, but they always come out the mix out. Also, if you plug into the individual outs, say you plug into the kick, then the kick's removed from the mix, which is a nice feature that the LDB1 expander didn't work that way. So you get a lot of functionality. As far as the sounds go, they've actually been improved. Oh well, we're talking about sounds, so maybe improved is in the ear of the beholder, but I believe they've been improved. They've been changed. The toms are basically the same. The high toms pitched up a little bit because now that you have the pitch control, I didn't want them to overlap. And I got rid of the wonky clap sound that was in the LDB1 and replaced it with rimshot sound, which is really nice.
Now, are these all sample based?
No sample. This is all totally analog.
Totally analog.
Yeah, totally analog. So you've got basically just the op amps. I mean, we're using the classic drum machine topology, and get me on the topic of drum machines because I talk about this for an hour and a half. Wearing my favorite T-shirt, my 808 T-shirt. So the classic drum machines, going all the way back from like the earliest ones, you generate a drum sound, a descending sine wave basically, which is the sound of nature. When you hit something, you get a sine wave that descends in volume. And that can be done by exciting an oscillator, a filter into self-oscillation. So it's a classic technique. It's been used forever. It's used on name your favorite drum machine. That's how it's done. And so by keeping it analog, it's one of those things. Again, I have no problem with digital, hence the wavetable module, but when you're talking about drums, you want that classic analog sound. So
yeah, that's excellent. So you've been able to add a lot of these features in there now. What is the depth of this module? Because I know you talked about how the other one was through hole and it was pretty deep. This is SMD and it's shallow, or
yeah, it's surface mount. It's also not a parallel circuit board like you saw in the other picture. It's perpendicular to the panel. It's parallel to the panel.
Oh wow!
So it will be skip friendly.
It will be skip friendly. Yeah. I don't have the exact measurement yet, but it's less than 48 millimeters, which is the informal skiff standard.
Sure.
So yeah, the drum module's two boards, and the expansion is only a single board. There's a ribbon cable that connects the two. The expansion is actually what makes the LDB kind of the two amazing. Is you get a knob and CV control over the pitch of every instrument, and knob and CV control of the decay on the kick and the open hi-hat.
Very cool. Now, will this be out pretty soon?
Yeah, fairly soon. It's in the final stages. It's going to go to manufacturing literally like within, I'd say, about 2 weeks.
I know
So
that you've been pretty busy as far as like you just did South by Southwest, and I know that you've been kind of hustling about. So
yeah,
I figure
well,
that's probably
yeah. So I do with Delptronics. I do a lot of contracting work as well, and so that's why the speed of getting modules out is not as fast as some other companies, or as fast as I wish it was. But I'm the only designer for Delptronics, so it has to wait for me. And I do a lot of contracting work. I do analog system design and embedded systems for other companies. So that stuff takes priority, and it kind of bumps out the release. I have people saying, "Hey, I saw the prototype for the LDV2 at NobCon in September. Where is it?" So yes, we're slow.
well. Let me ask you about a module that's been out for a while. The Triggerman V2.
Yeah.
So that is a module that a lot of people that I know who, when they got into modular, they wanted to make drum machines with their modular, because why would you not want to, right?
Right.
So Triggerman ends up in a lot of people's racks that I know. This is the second version of the Triggerman. What were some of the changes and some of the lessons learned when you were doing the Triggerman?
Well, it's actually it's the second version of the firmware in the same hardware. So even if you had the original, you can upgrade it.
Excellent.
And yeah, you can upgrade it yourself. There's instructions online, or you can mail it to us. We upgrade it for free. We just charge you the return shipping. But there's a million features added. It's actually really, really deep now. And some of the stuff that we added in the version 2 firmware are things like the ability to have different lengths for each of the sequences. So instead of being a fixed 8-step sequence, you can have 7, 6, 5, or 1 step, and that alone just makes for far more complex patterns, and of course they're synchronized and everything. So if you've and it's all the configuration is per output, so it's got 8 outputs, and you can set each one to a different length. So if you've just got your kick and snare on outputs 1 and 2, and you've got an 8-step pattern on the kick and a 6 on the snare, well, now the sequence is actually, not to get into the math, but the sequence ends up being 3 times as long before it starts to repeat. And just doing that's really awesome. But you can also do clock dividers on each individual output. There's more control over the length of the triggers. We added gate and reset functions. You have two sort of general purpose control jacks. One's labeled clock and the other's control. And you get through the configuration, you can set those jacks to do whatever it is you want to do. So you can have a clock, and then say the control jack is going to be a reset or a gate. Or you can do clock ticks, you can do voltage controlled tempo, you can do all kinds of cool things with it. Yeah, it's really neat. The thing that I love most about the new firmware, the feature I use all the time, is the randomization. And so you say you've got a pattern, you can actually, just with a couple of clicks, you can randomize that pattern. And one of the innovations is that there's 2 levels of randomization. So if you say, do a low or a slight randomization, it'll take the pattern you have and randomly turn on or off the steps. So there's a 50% chance that the steps won't change, and so it gives this like gentle morphing technique. And you can also set the output to be just constantly randomized, and that's really creates some beautiful patterns because you can have it with the low randomization, and it kind of just changes a little bit through each sequence, and you get really nice morphing patterns. One of the things with the Triggerman is that you set the pattern with one knob and then shift the pattern with the other knob, which enables you to really dial in anything really fast with like 2 fingers. But the randomization, you can actually assign to either the pattern or the shift. And I love to do set one on, and then randomize the shift, and then put that on my cowbell module, and so that you get this little ting ting, that happens at different points in the pattern, and it's really cool. Yeah, it's very deep. Very deep.
I want to ask you about, so the Triggerman is obviously a very deep drum sequencer in a very small package. Looking at some of the other things that you had done, I had a blast on that drum machine what was the name of that drum machine that you guys had at NAMM? It's so basic and so much fun. Yeah, that thing is so much fun.
Yeah, you mentioned it.
So, have you ever considered doing anything more large format?
Yeah.
For Euro?
Okay. So 2 things on that. One is that that big thing, which we call the music machine, which actually has drums and a pitch sequencer built into it. And the same general MIDI, so it makes all those sounds built in. So we are going to come out with a retail version of that. I don't know what the price is yet, because that's what I'm working on right now, is how to get the price down. I don't want it to cost $1,000 because then I'll sell one of them to some crazy person. So I'm really trying to get the price down. It's a giant thing. I mean, just the powder coating alone, it's expensive. Those buttons, I mean, retail for like $3, and there's 36 of them. So you really want to make it reasonable. So anyway, working on a new version of that. The one that you played is optimized for walk up and play. It's intended to be a proof of concept for an interactive exhibit, like for a museum. The retail version will have that functionality, but it will have deeper functionality as well. Because as much as people constantly say, I want one, I know that once you get it into your studio, you're going to run up against its limitations instantly and be like, okay, that was fun for the first 2 days, but so it's got to have a little more in it. And it's got to have that same look, the chrome and black. It's just really hot with the wooden sides and everything. So anyway, so large format stuff is a lot of fun, and we are going to come out with that. And you'll be the first to know when it's.
Yeah, I'm dying about that, because it was one of those things, like, I'm usually the kind of guy who is like a complete ass when it comes to like, oh, this doesn't have that feature and that, I'm fully admitting to being that guy. But that's one of the things, like, sometimes something is just so much fun and it's so immediately playable, and it's got, the nice arcade buttons on it and just the tactile feel of it, just the something about the simplicity, yet at the same time, like, that hands-on feel of it. It was just, it's charming is the best way that I can really, convey that, and it makes me say, wow, I would like to see more of that kind of stuff. But I totally agree with you that, having like really high price points on it, it does become one of those things where people are going to look at it and say, well, now we're getting up into pretty high level prices where I can get, whatever else that's going to do so much more. But, that thing was a blast. But that was kind of one of the things that got me thinking about the Triggerman, is something with the depth of like Triggerman, but more hands-on control as well, I think I had you freeze. Uh-oh. Let me make sure that I still have Mickey on here.
Oh yeah, it looks like I'm back.
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, thanks.
Oh wow.
Back from the internet ether.
Yeah, yeah. My router just thought this was a good time to reset.
And, you know, and that's always good. But basically what I was saying is that the hands-on functionality of it, but more with the depth of something like a Triggerman, and possibly something in Eurorack. Has that been anything that you've considered?
Okay. So yeah, so agreed. The number one feature of the music machine is its form factor, and I think that I agree with you. That's what makes it fun to play. But as far as Eurorack, I have always tried to make modules as small as possible. It's been a real goal, you know, like the LDB. I mean, 8 instruments in 6 HP, and yeah, there are kick drum modules that are, you know, have the same functionality, you know, with the 2 CVs, a gate, couple of knobs, and they're 24 HP.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't personally like that. Eurorack is a small format, and I like to keep the modules small. I like it to be like, wow, I've got 6 or 8 HP. I can put that module in here.
Mm-hmm.
You come out with a sequencer that's 42 HP, and there are plenty. And you're like, yeah, I kind of love it, but it's half a row, and so I don't know.
What about something like a standalone box? What about something more along the lines of a standalone box that has the CV outs, you know, for that? Kind of what Arturia did with the Beat Step, but maybe something more along your lines.
Yeah, well, that is absolutely what we're doing. The retail version of the music machine will have MIDI out and CV out. So you will be able to use it as a controller. You'll be able to hook it directly to another instrument, to your DAW, to your Eurorack, whatever. And so as a home version, if you click on that, there's I think a close-up, the big version. Oh, very big. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to have MIDI out, which is like kind of a no-brainer, and you'll be able to use it as a general controller. And so it'll have a controller mode where you can just assign functions to the buttons and knobs, and that's, it'll just send MIDI messages. But it'll also, when it's working as its normal mode as a sequencer, it can send MIDI out and CV and gate as well.
Sure.
So,
Well,
yeah.
are you considering doing things like expanding sequence length, like having like a page left, page right to go to 16 step and that kind of thing?
Yeah. There's a couple things that that'll be in there. So what we want to do, and when I say we, Delptronics is a small company. I am the designer, but I have this habit of saying we when I talk about.
I think most people seem to do that, like, and it just makes you feel like a bigger company.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to hide anything from the Flux with it people.
Well, the Flux, that's what I do too. So I'm like, yeah, we're working on an article, and it's really it's me slaving the night. So.
Yeah. So the design, I have some design goals, and that is that it still has to have that easy mode, the ability to walk up and play, figure out what it's doing pretty much within the first 10 seconds, and make beats, and it's got to keep that.
Sure.
And then have a deeper layer. I kind of have the same thing with the Triggerman. If you just twiddle the knobs, it's kind of does most of what it looks like it should do on the surface.
Right.
And when you get deeper into the functionality, you can learn a lot of the new stuff. So that's what's going to be in there. And one of the things that it has to have is the ability to go to 16 steps, at least for the drums. You know, even if it's still an 8-step pitch sequencer, it'll have memory. You know, there's a lot of features. Obviously, you want to be able to save. I want it to be something that you can really use in performance, you know, as a drum machine. And if you just love the interface and you want to hook it up to, you know, your analog drum machine and your analog synth, you know, I want it to work that way as well. So
now, you guys also do design services. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that service entails and what kind of things you do?
yeah, actually, as I mentioned earlier, that's my main business, and it affects the speed of getting the Delptronics modules out. But I really love that business. I spent a lot of years as a contractor, doing application development and management consulting and all kinds of consulting things. So in my blood, I'm a consultant. I'm a contractor. So I love doing the custom stuff. I get a couple of different kinds of, oh yeah, there's one, co-developed with Delptronics and Warmstar. That's an awesome pedal, uses the SSM filter chip, and it's got a lot of expressive features in it. And like I said, co-developed, Warmstar president and founder, Bradford Kinney, shout out. We developed that together, and he's doing the manufacturing on that through his company, and so that's one of the rare ones where I get to talk about the development process and actually show it off because it's a co-branded product. And most of the stuff that I do is contract, and it's under non-disclosure, and you know, I got a couple things. Actually, there's a fairly big one coming out soon that I'm allowed to say that I worked on it. but with most things, it's you know, you have either an individual that wants a custom thing built, do that all the time. Actually just built a custom version of the Music Machine for somebody. Or a company that either has analog expertise and not embedded systems, and they need some microcontroller programming done, or vice versa. They have, you know, all the embedded systems, and they don't you know, and all the digital stuff, but they don't have analog expertise in house. So I'll do that. And like I said, it's kind of my favorite thing. I really enjoy being a contractor and getting to do all kinds of different projects.
I'm going to screen share something now that is one of my personal favorite items that you guys have done. And I have a feeling you know what it is. I'm in love with this so much. The Delptronics Thunderbell in a cowbell.
Yeah.
It's just something about more cowbell in the cowbell just makes me so happy. But it's projects like this that really kind of make me just like it's the character of the company. You know what I mean? It's something about, you know, the uniqueness and the playfulness of the company really kind of comes through when you start seeing things like that. And the fact that you guys are doing projects like the Music Man, where, you know, you're getting kids into music and that kind of thing. I absolutely love that stuff. The playfulness of it, is that anything that you worry about or you shy away from? Because I know some guys want to be stiff and be very like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I don't worry about it. It's part of my personality, and it comes through. I'm glad to hear that it comes through in the company. And yeah, we'll put out a product called the Little Drummer Boy, and ignore all the people on the forums saying what a stupid name.
Mm-hmm.
It's cute, and underneath, it's a really powerful product. And the same thing, you know, like, oh my God, it's a cowbell and a cowbell. That's ridiculous. Yeah, but it's actually an analog cowbell that sounds amazing. And even the one in the cowbell has CV and gate jacks. It's it's an analog synth, and the playfulness, I think, is as you said, it's the character of the company. I'm really happy to hear that comes through, and that's not going to change.
That's what I like to hear, because I do. I'm lucky enough to where I get to consult for a few different companies, and I seem to see a fear these days with the movement of Eurorack towards a larger market. I seem to hear a fear from certain companies or certain people where they're worried that they won't be taken seriously if they allow their certain eccentricities kind of to creep out and come through. And I'm like, well, to me, those are the parts of Eurorack that I love the most. Is, you're not going to get Roland producing something like that. You're not going to get these suit companies that coming out doing goofy stuff like this. They're not rocking mohawks, in their suits. So it's like, to me, it's a good thing that these mom and pop style companies that are producing Eurorack keep their identity, when I see products like, I always reference back to it just because I personally love the panel artwork of like Dan Snazel. He has like the Snazzy Effects artwork on his stuff, and it's all colorful and crazy, and I'm like, I love that stuff. And
I love that too.
There's companies like Grayscale out there that'll change out panels, but and that's fine. Some people are into that. That's part of the uniqueness as well. But to me, I'm like, not everybody is meant to wear a suit to work every day,
Absolutely. Yeah, the existence of the Grayscale still kind of surprises me a little bit, that there's such a market for that. Even with something like a 4MS, my good friends and ex-Austinites, one of the many companies that moved from Austin to Portland, they make beautiful modules, and they put a little splash of color on there. Mm-hmm. And I'm just amazed that so offends people that they have to get a Grayscale version.
Yeah, it's really crazy because, like, for instance, I just recently built the elements for Mutable Instruments. Another great company that goes open source, and I wanted to try my hand at doing SMD soldering, so I went ahead and I built an Elements. Great crash course into SMD building, right? And when I got done, I looked at different panel options, and I could have done like Grayscale or whatever, but then I found Chris Northern, who was just starting to do some custom panels at the time, and he did these like they're like wood engravings, but he does them in like this black and gray, and really artistic panels. And I thought to myself, yeah, that's where I want to be, because it always surprised me that musicians and artists are trying to go this very like dry Grayscale panel route. Now Bryce, I think you were kind of more along the Grayscale lines, right? You kind of like that uniform look.
I like the uniform look. I was just interested in Grayscale for maths. That was the one module
you want that clear, concise.
Maths to me, I love make noise. It's just the module is just a little busy, and it kind of takes away from the when you have to look at all that, it's like, well, I just want to look at it, and I just want it to make sense to me, And I think some of the older designs make noise just kind of take away from just having a simple panel. There's something to be said for just a simple panel that makes sense, but yeah, I mean, I like the functionality, just panel, yeah.
And see, on me, like the Chris Northern panels, he still has the overlay on there so that you can still tell what everything is doing. I think to me that gets back more to just clearly identifying what is what on a panel should always be important,
Yeah.
Some of the writing, like I have the maths, what is it, 2013 or 2015 or whatever year it was that they redid it.
Yeah.
And like some of the things, like the rise and fall text is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Some of that text is kind of weird, but like I love the thunderbolts that were on the original, and that kind of stuff. I like that weirdness, and just looking at different things, I see things like the Dave Smith ones are just very, they look very plain to me. They got that black panel. They look nice, don't get it wrong, but I mean, like, to me that's very plain. But then I look at things that any of the Paper Noise modules, the way the Paper Noise stuff is designed, are just gorgeous. You know, to me that's a happy medium between, like, they have some personal character, and at the same time are very legible. Like he does a really great job at designing panels too.
But you mentioned the snazzy effects, and then it's just to see different panels and the guys that make these modules, expressing themselves through the panels. It's representative of what goes on in a modular system. There's just so much variety. So if everything looked the same, it would be kind of boring to me.
And I'll say, like, his newer panels, I think he's kind of gotten a little bit away from that design aesthetic of making them look so crazy. He still has, like, I guess his latest one was the Tidal Wave, and if you look at it, here, I'll screen share it. It's still definitely got a really cool artwork to it, but it's calmed down as far as color-wise, I guess, a bit. To me, I think you have to find that happy medium where you can kind of show your personal flair.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. I like the background image of the wave.
Yeah, I think that's really cool looking personally.
And because I like the playfulness, I think the crabs are great.
Yeah, exactly. And who was it? Evaton Technologies. I always pronounce it funky. It's Evaton or Evaton. They make the RF Nomad. When that came out, people were kind of like, I noticed some people were griping about the octopus design art that was on it. I'm going to share that as well. And I thought to myself, I was like, that stuff looks, to me, it looks fantastic. Like, here it is right here. And in person, like, it's all laser engraved and all, and it just looks really, really nice. It's very well done. But panels like that, see, it's still very easy to read, very easy to see what you're doing, but there's character to it, Yeah.
Right.
I kind of prefer that stuff, And
I agree.
Even who is it? Endorphins. They make those yellow panels that are really crazy looking. I love all that stuff. Like, to me, I'm like the more individual a panel is, the more I like it personally. That's just my own take on things.
Yeah.
So I'm saying all that to kind of push Mickey towards the fact that he has these playful devices, but his panels are all silver.
Well, I did do an interesting panel. You can actually pull it up for the first version of the Thunderclap analog hand clap.
That's the Endorphins, by the way.
That's so cool. That's so cool. I love that. Yeah, I did a black panel with a gold, like actual gold metal Thunderbolt on it.
Is that for the Thunderclap?
Yeah, go to Thunderclap.
Yeah, I was actually just looking at that one a minute ago. Let me pull that up.
So that was the that's a little dark picture, but yeah, that was the first version of that module, and I think it's really cool. And so after the first run of those, and then the silver one came out, I had a bunch of people buy silver panels because they didn't like the black and gold Thunderbolt. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something that I've talked to a few different manufacturers about, and they say that they do find sales of everyone except for Delptr sells more of the gray panels, and then Delptr does one panel that's a different color, and everybody goes bananas. But he's in a little bit different position, as he's got like 90 million modules that are gray, and then he drops one that's like blue or something, and the world just breaks in half.
Yeah. So I don't know. For me, lesson learned. I think if that's the standard for the Eurorack standard, I'm gonna make silver panels. I try to add a little embellishment where possible. Even the silver one has a thunderbolt on it.
Yeah, yeah, and it looks nice. It's sleek, you know. Yeah, I like that. I think it looks nice. Both of those panels, honestly, I kind of like them. My personal preference would be for the black panel. I'd probably want white knobs or gold knobs or something on it, like something to offset.
Oh, you want to talk about knobs, man? That is such a passionate topic for people.
Well, you know,
Gosh,
I'll
yeah.
tell you, I'm kind of a knob nut, and I find myself highly irritated on the DIY side at the selection of knobs. Like, they just are not, like, the selection when you can find different style knobs, it's like really big trade-offs between quality of the knobs and the look of the knobs and the feel, and it's just, and the price too, because I mean, man, some knobs are just ridiculous.
Oh yeah, it's easy to find like a $5-6 knob.
Yeah, and you're just like, really? And then as to whether or not it'll fit, you know, where it says it'll fit, you know, is, you know, always funny. And then you also have to look at the panel, and is there enough space on the panel? The text spacing away from the knob on the panel, you know, that kind of thing. It gets really frustrating because I'm not a fan of certain style knobs, and I understand why people use them for different things, but man, it just drives me nuts. It really does. You know,
it's a very personal thing, you know. And I do know a lot of people that the first thing they do when they buy a module that doesn't even go in the rack before they replace all the knobs. And I'll tell you, the knob that's the most popular is that Davies 1900 knob. That's
yeah, and I think that's for a few different reasons though. One, because it'll fit anywhere.
Yeah.
And two, it's cheap. And three, you know, they're easily identifiable as far as, you know, where they're set and all that. And they don't feel bad on your hand. They don't feel terrible. But
yeah, I like
for me,
soft touch knobs myself. But yeah, if you're gonna go to the effort to replace every knob in your rack, that's not a bad choice. You know, if you love that uniformity.
I really like the Dave Smith knobs with the rubber around them are really nice.
Yeah.
But again, extremely expensive. Like, if you go and buy a knob pack off of Dave Smith's site, it's like $60.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I bought a knob pack for something a while ago, and it was like $60. Yeah,
That
it a bunch of knobs. It was like, I want to say it was probably like 16 knobs or something like that. But still, like, it was still a lot of money for that many knobs. I remember that. I do like the knobs that Hex Inverter is using on the Mutant Hot Glue. They're like these tapered knobs.
Yeah.
I really like those. The Make Noise knobs are nice, but their pots tend to be really loose, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum. Like, I like certain type of knob and a certain type of viscosity on turning my knob as well, like a certain amount of friction. We could all be picky about these things.
I think mats, the friction on mats. It's funny you mentioned that. I was just playing with all my knobs to see which tension I like the best, and I think Clouds is a little stiff, and I think Mats is just about perfect.
To me, I think Clouds is perfect. So
see, I think it's too stiff. Yeah.
But then again, they use those D shaft on the Cloud stuff. So I really like those knobs, but you can't put those knobs on everything, and they're expensive. So it's always such a trade-off on what you want to put on there. Mickey, how do you decide what you're going to put on a module as far as when you're designing it?
I put the knobs on that I like the best.
Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, and the Triggerman is got to be the one that gets the most hate for its knobs. But man, I love those knobs. You know, I searched the world over for a knob with the aluminum inlay, and you know, it's got two encoders, so you don't want a pointer on the knob.
Yeah.
Which oddly doesn't seem to bother people. They'll throw a knob on there that has a pointer, and that for some reason that just rubs me the wrong way. It's like, but it's non-positional. It shouldn't have a pointer. But I love those knobs, and you know I pay good money for them, and that's how I decide. And although I do like the knobs I use on my other modules are the soft touch.
Yeah, I like soft touch a lot.
Yeah, they're not too big around, and they just have a really nice feel to them. So that's my favorite, and I use that on most things.
Yeah, soft touch knobs are a touchy thing for me because it's like some soft top touch knobs aesthetically, like the way they look, I don't always love them, but I like how they feel more.
Yeah.
So it's a weird trade-off. You know, like Davies, like I think Davies look really nice, but I don't always. I'd rather the softer touch for some reason. I like a more like grippy surface to grab onto.
Yeah.
So yeah, like anything, it's a really personal thing, but that's why we're in modular is, you know,
Yeah,
it's
it is very
modular. You know, it's you can change everything. You know, so
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we'll close out the show. I want to say thank you again for coming on, and you know, I'm really really excited about both of the new modules, the Little Drummer Boy 2 and the CV to MIDI. Both of those have us super excited. So
Great,
you know,
thank you.
I'll definitely be informing everybody I can as soon as those things become available. Now, will those be available out to you know, just every distributor, or like do you sell directly through the site? Like, what's your plan of action as far as that?
Yeah, they'll be the same as everything else for Delptronics, which is we sell direct through our website if you choose, but we also sell through a lot of distributors, especially brick and mortar stores. You know, we sell through various websites, but I'm a big fan of all these synthesizer stores that have cropped up in the last like 5 years, really. And they're great. I try to visit them whenever I'm, you know, in different cities traveling, and so yeah, everybody will have those modules for sale.
Excellent. So yeah, basically, I think, don't you guys have like a do you guys have like a, what is it called, like a mailing list or anything so that people can be available, you know, informed
Yeah.
as to when these things come out?
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. If you go to the Delptronics.com website and you click on contact, the contact form has a little checkbox that says, you know, join our new product announcement mailing list. And it is just product announcements. We don't spam. It's not like a weekly newsletter or something like that. It's just announcements. So definitely sign up for that. You'll hear when anything is ready to ship.
Excellent. So I just recommend everybody go check out Delptronics.com. It's pretty easy to find. You can look at the logo on his lower thirds right there to see the spelling. It's pretty basic. So definitely go check that out. I'm going to toss over to Bryce for a second. And is there anything you want to say as closing words? I think you're muted.
Yes, I was muted.
There you go.
No, nothing to add. Just good to hear Mickey and hear about. I wanted to know about the you know, CV to MIDI, and that was a big thing for me. So I'm really excited about that. But other than that, yeah, nothing to add.
Excellent. Well, on my end, what am I doing? I like to read. I don't know how you guys are, but I'm still of the old school where I like to read stuff. So I wrote it's like over 4,000 word article on the Dave Smith Prophet 12 versus the Novation Ultra Nova. I took two synths that are like completely opposite end of the price spectrum, and but do some interesting similar things and compare them in depth. And I'm in the process of shooting individual videos to go along with it, which they're kind of a pain in the butt to shoot the videos for it, to do it the way that I want, but whatever. So that should be coming out hopefully within the next week. I'm also doing videos for the Synthertech MIDI to CV module, and they have another module that I'll be building probably today, which is a foot expression pedal module to CV. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, just check out sonicexpansion.com, which is where I've been doing a lot of sound design work. And I have 3 sound packs coming out very soon, and an Ultra Nova sound pack preset coming out as well. So check that stuff out. And if you guys want to message me, ask me anything, if you guys have any suggestions on who you think I should have on the show, because as you can tell, I really like doing the show because I get to meet awesome people like Mickey Delp. Yeah, so anything like that, please let me know. Contact me on Facebook, Ken Flux Pierce on Facebook, and Instagram Flux302, fluxwithit.com, all that good stuff. So, Mickey, hopefully we can have you back on after release, and we can kind of talk about some stuff then, because I know you'll never stop working on new things. So that'll be great too. So,
Great.
all right.
Thanks for having me.
Yep, excellent. Everybody have a great weekend. It's been beautiful weather out here on the East Coast these past couple days. It's been like raining and then just beautiful right after. So get outside and enjoy it for a bit. So peace.
Take care.
Peace out.